We could be conquered, we could never be enslaved. Nobody, no one, no nation can ever take possession of our souls. Said the blessing downstairs. It says the only time in 40 years, Jewish people, they say 2 people, 3 opinions. Always somebody else has somebody else does something to add. But when they came before Mount Sinai, at that moment, like the mountain was one, the Jewish people were one. The only time in 40 years there was no dissent, no arguing, no conflict of opinions. Everybody felt the same way, filled with excitement and devotion, and anxiously awaiting the moment when Hashem would give us the Torah. This is where we're heading. We're getting there. This Shabbos, we bless the coming month of Sivan. Tuesday will be the first day of Sivan. Tuesday, we will relive it. Tuesday, we come before the mountain. Okay, Sarah Cohen is here. Rachel, always here. Rachel has a whole year to her credit, always being in class on time, always. Michal, you're from Venezuela. You're going to go back to Venezuela and join the team and teach Chabad, Hasidus to the ladies, the girls there. Share with them the knowledge that you've acquired. Danny Hess. Danny, where does your family stem from? Where did they come from? A few generations back. Poland? You know where in Poland? Don't know. They got out before the war.
One did.
And the other side of the family survived the war?
The other side, my mom's side, is all from England.
England?
Yeah.
Oh.
She's from Stanislav, Robert of Galicia.
Galicia.
Yeah.
A Galicianer. Me too. Galicia is a province like on the border between Ukraine and Poland. I'm told the Jews from Galicia are very personable, friendly, outgoing, sociable types. Many great tzaddikim in our history lived in Galicia. And before your parents or your grandparents were in England, they probably came to England around the 1900s. There was a large Jewish immigration at that time to England. They ended up living, I lived in England, so I know they lived in the East End of England, Brick Lane, where there's a Sunday market in Brick Lane. Why? Because the Jews kept Shabbos. Yeah. Whereas the famous Portobello market in London is open Saturdays. The Brick Lane market is open Sundays.
Do you know Edgware?
Ariel. Diamond, what?
Do you know Edgware?
Yes.
Mill Hill area?
I lived on the edge between, at one point for a few years, I lived on what's called a green. So there's a green area in the middle of, they used to come and play soccer there. Mm-hmm. And beyond the green, there was a woods called the Barnet Woods. It was 50 years ago. I was just thinking today, 50 years ago that I lived there. There was an old oak tree in the front of the cottage that I lived in. The cottage, it wasn't countryside. The cottage was attached to a house. The cottage was from the 1500s. The house was from the 1700s. The cottage was a private cottage, but it was attached to the house. The house, all the houses were freestanding houses on large pieces of land there. And I rented out this cottage, and there was a road that went by, and then the road ended, and it went became a path into the woods. And you went into the woods, you came up the other end in Edgware. So I often used to do that for exercise. I'd go for a run through the woods, come up in Edgware, and then come back on the roads around. I was living in Barnet. Barnet is North London when I was in school there. Boy, you have family from Edgware? Yeah.
They're a big Jewish community. Like they keep kosher, but they're not religious. But then I have other cousins in somewhere else, like nearby, who are religious. I don't know if there was a big Jewish community.
In Edgware, there's a sizable Jewish community. I don't know how much there's a sense of community, but there are many Jews who live there. We have a shlich there, Rabbi Sudak, Levi Sudak. I was a young boy when I was living there in Barnet. I didn't even know about Chabad in those days. When I found out Chabad, he was a bar mitzvah boy when I came to Chabad. And then he grew up and he became a shlich in Edgware. There you are. Okay, Hanabina.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so basically we finished off chapter 10. I wanted to review with you this Kabbalistic concept that we were studying yesterday about feminine waters, masculine waters, explaining what it means. That when we have a word, we have the basic setup. It says in Pirkei Avos these days, if a person will remember 3 things, he'll never come to sin. Then it tells us what the 3 things are. An eye that sees, an ear that hears, and all your deeds written in a book. So an eye that sees, we have cameras everywhere now. Nowadays, it's not hard to imagine. Nowadays, these are physical realities. But until 50 years ago, it was just things that we could imagine. But everything can be seen, everything can be heard instantaneously all around the world. And all your deeds written in a book. We have computers to record all the data. It's not hard to imagine these things anymore. But in the old days means 100 years ago, and previous to that, this was all things people had to extend their awareness. Then it goes on to explain these 3 things again. It says the Rebbe, this is speaking to 3 levels of people, and a sensitive person doesn't have to go further than the first phrase. Let a person remember 3 things and he'll never come to a sin. That's all you need to know. What are the 3 things? The first 3 things a person would think about that you know are reality. So the first reality that you know about is that there's a world here. Or maybe even before that, the reality that you know about is that you're alive. You wake up in the morning, however you feel when you wake up in the morning. I'm not going to get into that kind of description. Everybody can do that for themselves. But you know you're alive. And then you think a little bit further. You realize that you're in a world, physical world. And you think a little bit further. You realize that there's a God. There's someone that you're answerable to. And that here there's a whole system here that you have to do something creative to improve the situation, to improve the relationship between the one above and the world below. And you're the agent in the middle. If a person will think about these things, he's going to lead a good life. Okay? So that's what we're saying yesterday, the same thing, that there's a world, a creator, and we are the ones who unite it. How do we know? We act upon the world by doing good deeds. That's elevating feminine waters, causing a reaction from above, which is a flow of blessings, which is called masculine waters. Like, the husband influences the wife. The wife inspires the husband to want to be a husband. If you take a young man and put him with someone that he's totally not interested in. A young man put an animal. put a young man together with an animal, say, okay, you're married. I say, I don't marry animals, I'm sorry. I'm not like that. So the woman has to make herself appealing. Simple. A wife has to make herself appealing to her husband. He should be interested in her. If he's not interested in her, the marriage is not going to work. Maybe sounds crude, but that's the facts of life. How does a wife make herself appealing to her husband? You all know how to do things like that. By doing things that he likes. By letting him feel that she wants him to be her husband. She broadcasts certain feelings, and that arouses in him the desire to be a husband. So that really, the panemius, for an inward level of things, it's the woman who's inspiring the man. Outwardly, it looks like the man is inspiring the woman. The husband, a man takes a wife. The man gets married, takes a wife, gives her children. But really deeper, it's the wife inspires the husband to be able to do this. That's what panemius. That's a reference to what's called keser. Keser is higher than Chokhmah. Okay, this is what we were talking about yesterday. I want to give you another example, another explanation that we have from the Rebbe. The Rebbe spoke about this last week in Parshas Emor. An extraordinary thing. A friend of mine says he's very much into numbers, numerology. He thinks in numbers. Drives everybody crazy with his numbers. Tell you your name, what it means in numbers, everything. Numbers don't lie, he always says. Numbers don't lie. It's true, they don't lie. And there are a lot of things in the Hebrew in our system of understanding that are revealed through numbers. Because every letter has a numerical value. And when we see the relative numerical values of things, we understand all kinds of connections and relationships. So if we take the word for exile, the exile of the Jewish people is called the Gola. We're living in the Gola. Gola means exile, person who is exiled from his land is living in the Gola. Okay, here's the word goyla. Now, the beginning of the Hebrew alphabet, the first letter is Aleph. Aleph is one. One suggests to us right away the unity of God. In fact, there's even a medrash that when God created the world, each of the letters wanted to have the merit of being the first letter of creation. And the Aleph was presented itself, different letters. Each letter stood for an idea. Aleph was rejected for a certain reason, was very upset. Hashem said, don't be upset, Aleph, because you are going to start the 10 Commandments. Because Aleph is also the first letter of the word Anochi. Anochi, which means Anochi, I am Hashem, your God who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. That's the first of the 10 Commandments. It begins with the word Anochi, and the Aleph stands for Hashem. You see, now I'm going to digress a little bit. The 10 Commandments are central to our Jewish knowledge, and belief. that the whole Torah is contained in the 10 Commandments. And the 10 Commandments, if you think into it, are contained in the first 2 commandments. Because the first commandment is, I'm the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. And the second commandment is, you shall have no other gods before me. So because Hashem took us out of the land of Egypt, he redeemed us, we owe him our lives. So if there's anything he asks us, aren't we going to do it? So the first commandment is the source of all the positive commandments. The second commandment, you should have no other gods before me, means if I'm asking you to do something, why won't you do it? Because you have a different God that you want to serve, some other God. So the second commandment, have no other gods before me, is the source of all the negative commandments. Don't kill, don't murder, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't eat the opposite of kosher food, don't break Shabbos. So the second commandment, to have no other gods before me, is the root of all the second commandments, of all the negative commandments. But we could say really that even the second commandment is contained in the first one. If I'm the Lord your God, so you're going to keep all the positive commandments, you keep all the negative commandments too. So all the commandments are in the first commandment. And in the first commandment, they're all in the first word. And what is the first word? Is Anochi. Anochi stands for 4 words. Anochi means Ana, stands for Ana, which means I. The Nun stands for Nafshi, which means my life, my soul. The Chav stands for Kesavis, which means I wrote it down. And the Yud stands for Yehavis, Aramaic words, which means I wrote it. So that the word Anochi sums up the whole of the Torah, and it tells us, Hashem says, I took my soul, I wrote it down in the Torah, and I gave it to you. So that's what the first word means. And so that the first letter, the first word, contains the whole Torah in it. Okay? So the Aleph, which means 1, stands for the unity of God. Can I take this off the board? Yeah? It stands for the unity of God, the Aleph. And it's like obvious. Of course, Aleph stands for unity of God. So why was Aleph rejected? Why couldn't Aleph be the first letter of creation? So Hashem says, because the point of the creation is not for you, Aleph, it's for base. Aleph is about me, says Hashem. Base is for, we don't have a girl in the class this year with this name, but Ace is for bracha, which is blessing. I'm creating the world for a blessing. The world should be a place of blessing. That's the purpose. So the Aleph, the world is a place where Aleph can come in. So if Aleph comes into the world, so first we have the world that hides God. What is exile? Exile is when God is hidden. When God is hidden, we call that exile. When the base of Mikdash is destroyed, when people are killed, when the Jewish people are thrown out of their homes and out of their land, when it's very hard for them, that's Golus. That is Golus. What we call Golus. Exile. In exile, God is hidden. So if we take God, which is the letter Aleph, which stands for the unity of God, and we're going to bring this down and reveal it in the Gola. The Gola is exile, right? We're going to bring this Aleph and insert it here. In the world of exile, we get a new word. What's the new word? I put it in the wrong place. The word becomes geula. And geula means redemption. So what's the difference between gola, exile, and geula, redemption? Is the Aleph. The Aleph stands for Hashem. So if we take what that means is that by doing mitzvahs or learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, we reveal godliness in the gola. But it's there. We reveal it. It's there all along. We just have to reveal it. Like the secret factor, the secret element, the secret ingredient. There's a story. Once a king got lost in the woods. He didn't know where to find his way. He was on a hunting party, got lost. And this Jewish villager who lived in the forest took him in and took care of him and fed him. And the food was so delicious. He asked for the recipe. He gave the recipe to the chef. And he made it. And the king was very upset. Sent his soldiers, arrest this guy. You lied to me. You didn't tell me the right. Yes, I gave you the recipe exactly how I made it. He says, well, why did it taste different? Did you have a secret? What's the secret ingredient? He says, yes, Your Majesty. There was a secret ingredient. The secret ingredient was Shabbos. That's why it tasted different. Shabbos itself is a secret ingredient. So similarly, the olive, all the ingredients were the same, but Shabbos changed the taste. So the goyla, the world where God is hidden, remains the same world, but when you do mitzvahs, you reveal godliness there. You're using the world to do mitzvahs. You're using the world in the service of God. So there's an aleph in this. When the aleph shines in the world, we get geula. That is redemption. That is the opposite of exile. And this is what we're talking about yesterday. Only we called the world, instead of calling gola exile, we called it elevating feminine waters. Bringing the aleph into the geula is elevating the feminine waters. And this causes a reaction, which is blessings and goodness comes down into the world. This is something that the Rebbe taught us, but I never saw it anywhere else before. But it sums up and it just makes very clear this idea that's expressed in the Zohar in Kabbalah language, but it seems more complicated, but it's not. It's the same idea. There was a Reform rabbi, came to the Rebbe. He wrote a book about it. He remained a Reform. The Rebbe told him to remain a Reform rabbi. He became Shomer Shabbos. Put on tefillin every day. The Rebbe told him, you have to remain in your temple and take care of your people and guide them in the right way. When he finally retired, he says, I have to make a confession. They made him a big party. He said, I have to confess and let you know that I'm really an Orthodox Jew. They said, we knew that all along, Rabbi, but we love you. So the first time he came to the Rebbe, his name is Wiener, I think, Herbert Wiener. You can Google his books. First time he was at it for Brengen, he said, it seemed to me, Rebbe, you were saying the same thing over and over again. Rebbe looked at him and says, I only have one thing to say, he said. I only have one thing to say. So that this is really revealing the same thing we learned yesterday in chapter 10. Let's move on now to chapter 11. You want to Google up chapter 11, and they'll recommend you to a lawyer who deals with bankruptcy. Chapter 11 is a famous law in the American Constitution about what to do when you go bankrupt, how to save your assets. Chapter 11, page 165. Any questions before we go on? Hi. I wondered, sorry, if you were going out.
No, just getting ready.
So Esther comes in and you go out.
No.
Oh, Hashem, you didn't go out. You're still with us. Best way not to get any phone calls and interfere in the middle of the class is turn off the ringtone. Check after. Okay. Chapter 11, page 165. Fundamental principle. We've had this many times. We can go a lot faster now because we've covered all these ideas. Everything has an equal and opposite counterpart. Point, counterpoint. Everything in holiness has a counterpart in the opposite. Everything in the realms of wickedness has a counterpart in the holiness. Reb Zusha, who writes the introduction to the Tanya, Reb Zusha of Anipol, a colleague of the Alter Rebbe, used to say that you could learn 7 things how to serve God from a thief. You can learn how to serve God from a thief. Why? Because we're also stealing. We're stealing godliness from the grips and the clutches of the Yetzer Hara. So just like a thief has to be quick, we have to be quick. Just like a thief has to work in secret. So we find a lot of the greatest tzaddikim were very secretive about the way they behaved. To serve God with modesty, not to draw any attention to yourself. Who are you after all anyway? Just do a thing because it's the right thing to do. The same way a thief has to pay attention to all the little details, every little detail. Sherlock Holmes mysteries. I never read other mysteries. I'm sure they're all the same. There's always some little detail that gives away the criminal, gives him away. He overlooks. Sherlock Holmes mysteries. He'd see a piece of thread on the floor, and that would be the clue that would lead him to finding who's the criminal. Every little detail is very, very important to a thief. And similarly, in serving God, there's no detail that's unimportant. Every detail is significant. A thief has to be courageous. If you're a thief, you can't be you'll never be a successful thief if you're afraid the whole time. You're afraid of taking a risk. A thief takes a lot of risks. Climbs up a building, goes through a window, tries not, So in serving Hashem, we also have to be courageous and not be afraid and not be intimidated by all the people who would laugh and discourage us. And not only courageous, a thief has to be confident. He has to be sure he's going to succeed or he'll never try. Right? So we have to be confident that we can serve Hashem. And finally, I don't know if I've listed 6 things yet, or maybe only 5, but the last one is, the last lesson we learned from a thief is, if at first you don't succeed, you try again. A thief doesn't give up until he gets what he's after. So we can learn from all these negative things, we can learn positive things, because everything has an opposite counterpart from the world of unholiness in the world of holiness. We can use every negative thing in a positive way. Rabbi Mendel Futerfas, a famous chassid who passed away just not too long ago, spent many, many years in Siberia because of his activities to keep Jewish education going in communist Russia. He used to say the reason the Reb Zusha learned 7 things from a thief is because he never really sat in prison like I did. If he'd sat in prison like I did, he would have learned a lot more things. You know, one of the famous stories that he told was that the prisoners used to play cards. And one of the rules of the prison is you're not allowed to play cards. Prison isn't a place where you have fun. And the guards would break into the room and they couldn't find the cards. Try and catch them playing cards and punish them. Could not find the card. And then the guards would leave and the cards would come back out and they'd play cards again. And the guards would come back and break into the room. He said, we know you're playing cards. Where are they? They couldn't find them. They tear the room apart. Could not find the cards. One time, Reb Mendel asked one of the Ganovim, one of the thieves, how do you do this? You have the cards. They break into the room. They can never find the cards. Where do you put them? They look everywhere. Where do you put the cards that they can never find them? He said, we don't want to tell you. Because a thief doesn't want to tell. Everything has to be quiet on the QT, quiet, secret. Finally, he got them, he won their confidence. He got them to reveal what was the secret. They were expert pickpockets, all of them. One time I was in Israel around Purim time before I got married. We went on Mivtzayim. So we went to a prison. It was low security. Israelis committed some crime. They were being held. And I went into the room where they slept, put on tefillin with them. And when I was going out of the room, this guy is in a bunk. He reaches down from the bunk and says, Rabbi, did you lose this? He has my wallet. I said, how'd you get that? They were just kibitzing. They were just joking around. So that's the secret. They revealed to Reb Mendel, where did they put the cards so the guards couldn't find them? They put the cards on the guards, in the pockets of the guards. Because when people always look at the bad things in others, they never look at the bad things in themselves. So they never thought to look for the cards in their own pockets. So Reb Mendel used to say, yeah, if he'd been really in prison, they would have learned a lot more than 7 things. Okay, Zelium Mazeh, great principle in Torah. Everything has an opposite counterpart. So just like we learned in the last chapter about the tzaddik who has a yetzer hara, the tzaddik who has ra means evil. The tzaddik who has ra, a little bit left over, the opposite counterpart to that is the wicked person who has a little bit of good left over in his soul. Or maybe a lot of good left in his soul. But it's still over the border. He's in the category of a wicked person. A wicked person does make mistakes. A wicked person makes mistakes. He commits transgressions. He does things against the Torah. Not willingly, accidentally. But if he was more righteous, he'd be more alert, and he wouldn't make mistakes. You know, like you're driving a car, you're careful to drive on the right side of the road. If you're daydreaming, you could drive on the left side of the road, heaven forbid, and hit somebody. You say, oh, I didn't mean it. It was just a little lap. Well, the same thing applies to Shabbos and Kashrus and other mitzvahs where we don't see someone's getting hurt. Oh, let's say a person takes something on credit, takes something from the store and says to a friend, you know what? Oh, I don't have any cash on me today. I'll pay you on Tuesday. Okay, no problem. You're my friend. I trust you. And he goes away and he forgets about it. Forgets. A month later, he says, you know, what about that? I mean, I have a guy, he borrowed money from me one time. He promised to pay me back and never paid me back. Never. So a few years later, he comes to me again. He says, David Sholem, it was on a Thursday. I remember coming to him and said, David Sholem, I'm in a bind. I need to have $500 today. Can you help me? I'll pay you on Tuesday. I said, no problem. I know he asked me once before. I'll give him another chance. And I get him the $500. I go to the bank. I get him $500. I give it to him. Comes Tuesday. Oh, I can't. I'm a bit tight. Not today. Anyway, I still have this note on my computer screen. It's 3 or 4 years later. He forgot. He didn't mean to. He's not. But, you know, that's why a person isn't called a tzaddik, because a tzaddik doesn't forget. An elephant doesn't forget. A tzaddik doesn't forget what are his obligations to God. And a person is only as good as his word. So a person could be a Rasha. He's basically really a good person, a well-meaning person, but he forgets. You go out there, you forgot. Oh, Shabbos, I forgot. I have a letter in my pocket. I have a check in my pocket. I had to take it to the bank. I forgot to check my pockets before I went out this Shabbos. Oh, I just had a delicious stew Friday afternoon. I tasted the cholent before Shabbos. I forgot I had pizza just 2 hours ago. It was hard cheese and I'm milk. I'm not supposed to have meat for another 4 hours. You forgot. You didn't mean it. You forgot. But you're not a tzaddik. You understand? So we have this category of a wicked person who has good. This is the tzaddik who knows bad. He's the opposite of the bad person, the person who is a wicked person who still has good. Okay, I see our time is up, so we'll have to come back to this tomorrow, Thursday. We should do this chapter very quickly because we're familiar with all the concepts. Okay, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really misused a word in this discussion. I said someone was back.